Okay, we need to talk about something that's been keeping me up at night. And if you're a BTS fan, ARMY, or anyone who pays attention to music that actually means something, this is going to absolutely blow your mind. Min Yoongi, Suga, August D. Whatever name you know him by, just called his upcoming collaboration with Jimin his most personal work. Let that sink in for a second. This is the same man who wrote an entire mixtape about his struggles with depression and anxiety. The same artist who literally named a song The Last, where he talks about his darkest moments, his fears, his therapy sessions. The guy who has been brutally, painfully honest about mental health, about the weight of fame, about wanting to die and choosing to live. And now he's saying that this collaboration with Jimin is his most personal work? What could possibly be more personal than what he's already given us? What is happening in that studio that has unlocked something even deeper in Suga? I have been digging into every piece of information I can find, talking to people, reading between the lines of interviews, and what I've discovered is absolutely fascinating. So buckle up, because we're about to go deep. First, let's establish some context here, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. We're talking about February 2026. BTS just announced their comeback album Arirang dropping in March. The world tour has been confirmed with Los Angeles in September, already causing absolute pandemonium in the ticketing world. All 7 members have completed military service, and they're back in the studio together for the first time in years. But here's what's interesting. Within all of that group activity, within all of the BTS reunion hype, there are these smaller stories happening. Individual collaborations. Members working together in different configurations. And the Suga-Jimin collaboration is generating a specific kind of buzz that's different from everything else. Industry insiders are talking about it in hushed tones. Producers who have heard early versions are being weirdly cryptic and emotional when asked about it. And Suga himself, a man who is usually very measured and specific in how he describes his work, used the phrase most personal, which is just, it's a massive statement coming from him. To understand why this is such a big deal, you have to understand Suga's relationship with personal music. This man has built his entire artistic identity on vulnerability. From the very beginning, even in early BTS tracks, Suga's verses were always the ones cutting deepest, talking about real struggle, real pain, real systemic problems. Then came his August D mixtapes where he just completely stripped away any idol persona and gave us raw, unfiltered Yoongi. We're talking about songs where he discusses his experience with depression, his social anxiety, his complicated relationship with fame and success, the pressure of representing millions of people, the fear of losing himself in the process. The last is basically a therapy session set to music. People talks about the loneliness of success. Daechwita is him literally fighting with different versions of himself. This is not surface-level music. This is a man using his art to process trauma, to make sense of his experiences, to communicate things that he can't say in regular conversation. So when someone who has already been that vulnerable, that honest, that willing to expose his pain to millions of people says that something is his most personal work, what does that even mean? What's left to explore? What could possibly go deeper than discussing your mental health struggles, your fears about death, your complicated feelings about the career that saved you and simultaneously trapped you? The answer, and this is where it gets really interesting, seems to be connection. Not struggle, not pain, not criticism of society or fame. Connection. Specifically, the kind of connection that exists between him and Jimin. Let's talk about Suga and Jimin because their relationship is actually fascinating when you really look at it. On the surface, they seem like complete opposites, right? Suga is the reserved, introspective, brutally honest producer from Daegu who communicates through music more comfortably than through words. Jimin is the warm, emotionally expressive, perfectionist dancer and vocalist from Busan who connects with people naturally and wears his heart on his sleeve. They move through the world differently. They communicate differently. Their creative processes look different. But anyone who has followed BTS closely knows that underneath those surface differences is this really profound mutual respect and understanding that has developed over more than a decade of working together at the absolute highest level of pressure and success imaginable. There are countless moments over the years where you can see this connection. The way Suga watches Jimin perform with this look of genuine admiration. The way Jimin seeks out Suga's opinion and clearly values his perspective. The way they communicate in the studio with minimal words, just understanding each other's artistic vision intuitively. They've been through everything together. The uncertain early days when BTS could have easily failed. The explosive success that changed their lives overnight. The pressure of representing Korean culture globally. The isolation of fame. The hiatus. Military service. All of it. And through all of that, they've developed this bond that's really difficult to categorize. It's not just friendship. It's not just professional respect. It's something deeper that comes from shared experience at an intensity level that very few people in the world can understand. Now, the military service period is crucial to understanding what's happening now. When BTS went on hiatus in 2022, it was the first time since their debut that these guys had extended separation from each other and from the relentless schedule of being global superstars. For Suga and Jimin specifically, this time apart came at a really important moment in their individual artistic development. Suga had already established himself as a formidable solo artist and producer with multiple acclaimed projects. Jimin was stepping into his solo career with Face and then Muse, both albums that showed incredible artistic growth and willingness to explore vulnerability, identity, sexuality, the search for authentic connection in a world where everything feels performative. They were growing separately, discovering new things about themselves as individuals rather than as parts of a group. And military service, for all its challenges, gave them something they hadn't had in years. Time. Time to think. Time to reflect. Time to just sit with themselves without the constant pressure of the next release, the next performance, the next achievement. Multiple sources have mentioned that both Suga and Jimin used this time for deep self-reflection. Suga has talked about reconnecting with why he started making music in the first place, remembering the kid in Taegu who just wanted to express himself through beats and words. Jimin has discussed using his service time to think about his identity beyond being an idol, about what he truly wanted to say as an artist, about who he is when nobody's watching. So when they reunited in Los Angeles in early 2026 for the Arirang album recording sessions, they were different people than they were when they separated. They had grown individually. They had new perspectives. They had processed their experiences. And according to multiple industry sources who were actually present in those LA studio sessions, something remarkable started happening when they began working together on this collaboration. The energy was different from previous BTS recording experiences. There was this quietness to their work together, this depth of communication that didn't require a lot of words. One producer who worked with them described watching Suga work on production while Jimin sat beside him, and the level of unspoken understanding between them was remarkable. Jimin would make a small gesture, just a slight movement of his hand, and Suga would immediately understand and adjust the mix. Suga would play a chord progression, and Jimin would start humming a melody that fit perfectly, as if he had been hearing it in his head the entire time. This isn't just professional chemistry. This is something deeper. This is two artists who have grown so attuned to each other's artistic vision that they can communicate almost telepathically. But here's what's really interesting. According to people close to the project, Suga was rewriting his verses multiple times, which is actually unusual for him. Suga is known for being decisive. He knows what he wants to say and he says it. He doesn't second-guess himself. He doesn't endlessly revise. But for this track with Jimin, he kept coming back, refining, trying to get the words exactly right. Why? Because the subject matter was so close to his heart that he couldn't settle for anything less than perfect expression. When you're trying to articulate something that matters that much, every word has to carry exactly the right weight. So what are they actually making? What is this collaboration that has Suga calling it his most personal work? From what we've been able to piece together from various sources, the track deals with themes that Suga has thought about deeply but never quite found the right way to express until now. It's about connection, but not romantic love necessarily, and this is important. The song apparently doesn't explicitly define the nature of the relationship it explores. It's about the type of connection that transcends easy categorization, the kind of bond that develops between people who have been through extraordinary experiences together. People who have seen each other at absolute worst and absolute best. People who have grown up together in the most intense circumstances imaginable. And here's why this is Suga's most personal work. Suga has always been more comfortable writing about struggle than about connection. Think about his solo discography. It's about internal battles, societal critique, the dark sides of fame and success, mental health survival, love, friendship, deep emotional bonds. These topics have appeared in his work, but usually from a more guarded perspective, from a distance. This collaboration with Jimin is pushing him into territory he usually avoids. It's forcing him to articulate feelings and experiences that are harder to package into aggressive rap verses or cynical social observations. It's making him talk about care, about constancy, about the people who keep you grounded when everything around you is chaos. The production itself is apparently really significant and different from what we'd expect. Rather than the hard-hitting, aggressive beats Suga is known for in his August D work, or even the polished pop production of typical BTS tracks, this collaboration apparently features a more stripped-down, intimate sound. There are reports of live instrumentation, which Suga specifically brought in. Remember those photos of him carrying a guitar to the LA studio? That wasn't random. He wanted live instruments for this track. And that's huge because Suga is known primarily as a digital producer. The choice to use live instruments, organic sounds, suggests a desire for warmth, for something that feels human and tangible rather than perfect and polished. This is music meant to be felt in your chest, not just heard with your ears. One source described hearing an early mix and said the production feels almost vulnerable, like it's intentionally leaving space and imperfection in places where Suga would normally polish everything to absolute perfection. That choice, that willingness to let things be raw and imperfect, that's deeply personal for someone who is known as a perfectionist producer. It's him saying this matters more than technical perfection. The emotion matters more than the production flex. And we have to talk about Jimin's role in all of this because he's not just a featured artist here. Jimin is apparently the key to why this is Suga's most personal work. Jimin has this remarkable ability to bring out vulnerability in the people he works with. His own artistic journey over the past few years has been defined by his willingness to be emotionally naked in his music. Muse dealt explicitly with searching for authentic connection, for love that transcends the performative nature of fame, for someone who sees the real person behind the idol. That same quest for authenticity is what he brought to this collaboration with Suga. People who have heard rough versions of the track describe Jimin's vocal performance as absolutely devastating in its emotional honesty. He's not just singing pretty melodies, he's pouring himself into every single phrase. And apparently, that level of commitment, that willingness to be completely vulnerable, is what pushed Suga to match that vulnerability in his own contributions. It's like they're challenging each other to go deeper, to be more honest, to take bigger risks. And when two artists who are already known for their emotional depth start pushing each other like that, the results can be absolutely extraordinary. There's also something really significant about what this collaboration represents in terms of their journey together. Suga and Jimin have been part of BTS since the very beginning. Since the days of practicing in cramped studios and wondering if anyone would ever listen to their music. They've experienced the impossible together. The rise from complete unknowns to global superstars. The pressure of representing not just themselves, but an entire cultural movement. The isolation that comes with fame of that magnitude. Very few people in the world can understand what that experience is like, and even fewer have experienced it alongside them. When Suga calls this his most personal work, part of what he's acknowledging is that Jimin is one of the only people who can truly understand the emotions and experiences he's trying to express, because Jimin lived them too. They share a context that doesn't need to be explained. They share a history that informs everything they create together. And now, after time apart for individual growth and self-reflection, they're coming back together with new perspectives and new depths to explore. That combination of shared history and individual growth is apparently creating something really special. From an industry perspective, people are watching this collaboration really closely because it represents something potentially significant for BTS as a whole. BTS has always functioned as a group with strong individual identities, but they've been protective of maintaining the group dynamic. They've been careful not to let subunits or individual projects overshadow the collective. The fact that Suga and Jimin are creating something this personal together, something that apparently stands apart from the typical BTS sound and approach, suggests a new phase for the group. It suggests that they're secure enough in their bond as 7 members to allow for these deeper explorations of individual relationships within that larger structure. It's a really mature approach to collaboration that reflects how much they've all grown. The creative process, working together. Let's talk about their actual working process because the details that have emerged are fascinating. Sources indicate that Suga has been more hands-on with every aspect of this track than he typically is, even for his solo work. He's involved in every mix decision, every instrumental choice, every vocal layering decision. But here's what's different. Usually when Suga is that controlling, it can create tension. He knows what he wants, and he pushes for it. But for this collaboration, Jimin has been equally involved in creative decisions, particularly around melodic choices and arrangement. And rather than creating conflict, their different perspectives are apparently complementing each other perfectly. People who have witnessed their working process describe a genuine partnership where both artists are equally invested and equally willing to push each other. Jimin will suggest a melodic change, and Suga will immediately understand why and how to make it work. Suga will propose a structural shift, and Jimin will hear it and know exactly how to adjust his vocal approach. This isn't one artist with a vision using another artist to execute it. This is 2 artists building something together where the final product genuinely couldn't exist without both of their contributions. That's rare. That's special. And that collaborative energy is apparently part of why this feels so personal to Suga. He's not just making music. He's making music with someone in the truest sense of that word. From the carefully leaked information about the lyrics, we know the song deals with themes of finding constants in a world of constant change. Suga has written about the disorientation of success before, the way fame can make you feel unmoored from reality, disconnected from your past self, uncertain about who you really are versus who people think you are. But this collaboration apparently explores the flip side of that experience. The people and connections that remain real even when everything else feels surreal. It's about recognizing someone who knew you before the world knew you, and how that person becomes an anchor, a reminder of who you actually are beneath all the noise and expectation in performance. One line that has apparently leaked, though I cannot confirm this is exactly accurate, roughly translates to something about the voice that sounds the same in empty rooms and sold-out stadiums. If that's real, and it very well might not be exact, but if something like that is in there, that's Suga talking about authenticity in relationship, about someone whose presence and meaning doesn't change based on external circumstances. That's incredibly personal. That's him talking about something that clearly matters deeply to him, using Jimin as both the creative partner and possibly the subject or inspiration. And that blurring of lines between collaboration and subject matter, between working together and writing about what that relationship means, that's what makes this so personal. The timing of this collaboration adds another layer of significance. Suga is at a point in his career where he has absolutely nothing left to prove. He's already achieved more than most artists dream of. Commercial success, critical acclaim, respect from peers, influence over an entire generation of musicians. He's wealthy. He's secure. He could easily coast on past successes or play it safe with music that he knows will be well received. The fact that he's choosing instead to create something that makes him uncomfortable, that requires him to be vulnerable in new ways, that might not fit neatly into any category or meet any expectation, that choice itself is deeply personal. It's the choice of an artist who is more interested in growth and truth than in maintaining an image or meeting market demands. And doing it with Jimin, someone who pushes him to be more vulnerable, someone who won't let him hide behind clever production or aggressive delivery, someone who demands emotional honesty because that's what Jimin brings to everything he does. That's Suga actively choosing growth over comfort. That's him saying this relationship, this collaboration, this moment of creating something true together matters more than playing it safe. There are also whispers, and these are harder to confirm, but multiple sources have hinted at this, that the process of creating this collaboration has been therapeutic for both artists in ways that go beyond the music itself. The act of creating together, of communicating through music about things that might be difficult to articulate in conversation, has apparently strengthened their bond and given both of them new insights into themselves and each other. Music has always been how Suga processes his emotions and experiences. It's his primary language for things that matter. Having Jimin as a creative partner in that process, someone who understands both the technical aspects of music making and the emotional weight of what they're trying to express, seems to have unlocked something important for him. Several people close to the project have mentioned that Suga seems different when working on this track. More open, more willing to discuss feelings and ideas that he usually keeps private, more comfortable being emotionally present rather than intellectually distant. That's huge for someone whose default mode is often to analyze and critique rather than to simply feel and express. If this collaboration is helping Suga access parts of himself that he usually keeps guarded, if it's creating space for emotional honesty that extends beyond just the music into his actual life and relationships, then yeah, of course it's his most personal work. It's changing him, not just documenting who he already is. The big question now is how this track will actually be released. Will it be part of the Erarang album, or will it be a standalone release? There are arguments for both approaches. Some sources suggest it might work better as a standalone, something that exists apart from the group comeback, allowing it to be appreciated on its own terms without the weight of BTS expectations and without having to fit into the album's overall narrative. Others argue that including it on Erarang would add an important dimension to the album's story, showing a different side of the group's emotional and creative range, demonstrating that they can contain multitudes. Honestly, I don't think it matters that much how it's released. What matters is that it exists. What matters is that Suga felt safe enough and inspired enough to create something this personal. What matters is that Jimin was the person he chose to create it with, and that Jimin met him at that level of vulnerability and raised the stakes even higher. What matters is that after everything they've already achieved, after all the music they've already made, they're still pushing themselves to go deeper, to be more honest, to take risks in service of artistic truth. So why is Suga calling this his most personal work with Jimin? Because it's asking him to be vulnerable in ways he usually avoids. Because it's about connection rather than struggle, about what sustains us rather than what hurts us. Because it's created with someone who knows him deeply enough to push him past his comfort zone while also making him feel safe enough to actually go there. Because the process of making it has been as meaningful as the product itself. Because it represents a new phase of artistic maturity where personal growth matters more than commercial success or critical approval. Because sometimes the most personal work isn't about trauma or pain. Sometimes it's about the people who make life worth living, the connections that keep you grounded, the voices that sound the same whether you're in an empty room or a sold-out stadium. This collaboration is Suga stepping fully into emotional territory he's previously only touched on. It's him using his craft to express something true and important about human connection, about constancy, about the people who help us remain ourselves even as everything around us changes. And the fact that he's doing it with Jimin, that he chose Jimin as the person to explore this territory with, that says everything about their relationship and creative compatibility. Some connections are simply too deep, too significant to be easily explained. They can only be expressed through art, through music that captures something words alone cannot convey. When this track finally comes out, whether it's on the Erarang album or as a standalone release, whether it's next month or 6 months from now, I think we're going to hear something that genuinely surprises us. We're going to hear Suga in a way we haven't heard him before. We're going to hear the artistic chemistry between him and Jimin elevated to a new level. And we're going to understand exactly why he called this his most personal work. Because when you listen to it, you're going to feel it. You're going to hear two artists who trust each other enough to be completely honest, who push each other to go deeper, who create something together that neither of them could create alone. That's what makes it personal. That's what makes it matter. That's why we should all be paying very close attention to what Suga and Jimin are creating together. Because I think it's going to be something really special. Something that reminds us why we fell in love with BTS in the first place. Not because of the spectacle or the success, but because of the honesty, the vulnerability, the willingness to show us who they really are. And that's the most personal thing any artist can do.